This episode of Shootin The Shiznit is brought to you by WeHaveMerch.com. WeHaveMerch.com. Standard size shirts at only $12.99. Shirts include I'm a Shiznitter, my old buddy, Cool Kids Countdown logo, Shootin The Shiznit logo, Happy Shiznit Day, and many more. Order your shirt today at WeHaveMerch.com.
Have you listened to episode 107, this week's Shootin The Shiznit? Take a minute, listen to this clip, download it with all the archives at www.stspod.club. Actually, it was, I don't know if I should kayfabe this or not, but it was the picture that the people that sold the photos. I had a source with them. And so they told me the title's going to change hands. You need to be at the Coliseum.
Oh, man.
I go down there, miss work, and the whole 9 yards. And as we know, the title didn't change hands. But then the same people tell me Lawler's going to win the belt from Hennig. He's going to win the belt from Hennig. And I was really pissed about them telling me that he was going to win the belt from Flair. And I didn't go to see him. And he actually did win the belt from Hennig. So that was when you're dealing with people inside the wrestling business, you never know what you're going to get. It's either truth or just bullshit. So, Nate, I see you all over the place, Fred. And you said you're in Mississippi now, but I see you everywhere. You're like, you decided to go to New Orleans for this for WrestleMania weekend, where did you go before that? There's some other cards I've seen you at. Some of the big cards.
Man, to be honest, I'm trying to remember. Oh, of course, last year. Of course, I think before that was I went to see I just went to see the Ring of Honor TV taping up in Nashville in January.
Okay.
And I went to that, and last year I went up to
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Let's start the party.
And she says, I wish that I could be like the cool kids, 'cause all the cool kids, they seem to fit in. I wish that I could be like the cool kids.
Hey, let's welcome. This is episode 108. And it's a special episode, and believe it or not, we're going to do another Cool Kids Countdown this week on Thursday because we had the Superstar, I'm wanting to call it the Superstar Shakedown. I called it Shake and Bake, Shakedown, Smackdown. I'm just confused, but it's the Superstar Shakeup. We want to go ahead and jump on here and talk about that. We've had big responses on our news programs, believe it or not. So the rundown of WrestleMania and a roundtable. So I want to thank everyone this month, and me and you talked about this in the inbox. I've got Lance LeVine live
right
from
here, Arm & Hammer Studios in Chicago. Arm & Hammer, because it stinks in here. So we have some odors and aromas. So we got Arm & Hammer sponsoring this week.
But we, all right. Well, I hope everything works out over there. You got to watch those tacos, man.
Racist.
I can't even talk. Shut up!
All right. So
I was telling myself that. Well, we talked about this before about making all of the shows like, it's hard sometimes to get a, quote unquote superstar, but we have some pretty big names coming up in May, but it's good to find a homegrown in the sense that it's all our programs and everyone's listening just to listen to us. So thanks, guys. We beat last year's record to hell already. So it looks like it's going to be a real good month, and we appreciate it. But today, let's do it, Lance. Tell everybody what we're doing, because I wish someone could read our conversation in Facebook on this one, because me explaining what I wanted to do was totally different than what it was going on in my mind. And you was fucking confused. I looked at your list and was like, what the hell is he doing? Went back to Facebook and looked at what I typed up, and it's exactly what I told you I wanted to do. So,
exactly.
But we ended up doing something totally different. So
So really confusing, but what we're doing is we wanted to look at the Superstar Shakedown or Shakeup or Shake and Bake or whatever, and so what we put together was the top 10 relevant and irrelevant Superstar moves on what happened this week between the two shows. So one thing I'll say before we get to the list is that SmackDown totally made out on this. Like, all the big name moves went to SmackDown, and all I can think of is that Raw really took the beating as far as the talent goes, and the only thing I can think of is that this has something to do with the TV contract coming up for renewal, because it seems like they really wanted to bolster the star power on SmackDown. I think what they're going to do is rely on the fact that Raw has the name and has the history, and Raw will continue to get the better ratings just because it's Raw, whereas SmackDown needed the shot in the arm. So I think that was one of the key things to this whole thing, is that they really made the big moves went to SmackDown. So, in light of what we tried to do with our lists and what happened, of course, I got stuck with the irrelevant moves. So I have the top 5 irrelevant moves of the Superstar Shakeup. And of course, because it's his show, he got the top 5 relevant moves of the Shakeup. So BT has the the odd numbers, because he's odd, and I have the even numbers or something like that.
Come on, man. Tell the truth. You're always a negative, what is it, negative Nelly? Is that what it is?
Negative Natty.
Natty. There we go. And when you give this number 10, I'm really confused. So let's start out. Go ahead.
All right. So number 10 is mine, which is irrelevant. So the even numbers are the irrelevant moves, the moves that are really meaningless in the big picture for all the shakeups that they did. So at number 10, we have R-Truth going to SmackDown.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I thought the actual segment that he did with New Day and Ty Dillinger was hilarious. He is just comedy, and that's all it is. And whether you can accept it for what it is, and boom, no one really gives a shit about R-Truth. But it's like, unfortunately, he's still a decent worker, but he don't do anything for me, except I do get a laugh out of almost every time he does an interview. And by the way, I've met R-Truth when he first, unknown fact there, Lance, you didn't know this.
I did not know that. Breaking news.
I met him and told him and taught him a lot of the moves that he actually does now. No, I actually met him during MCW days. Super nice guy, and was just really wanting to learn more and more about the business at the time. He was very young then, but you're right. This doesn't matter.
Was he naked when you met him? Because I'm usually used to your stories where, he was naked in the shower and I had to hold up a curtain.
No, he actually was outside smoking, believe it or not.
Oh, okay. So, and he wasn't naked.
No. Well, half
good.
his body was naked. So.
So, all right, R-Truth to SmackDown. Let me preface this by saying I was actually a fan of his back in the day. I liked the guy. I always thought it was an entertaining act, and I thought he could go in the ring, like you said, to a decent level. But today he brings so little to the table. I mean, all he really brings is comedy at this point. And at this point, honestly, I hate to admit it, but the comedy itself is just so-so. I think he's still clinging to that mistake that he made. I think he was in Green Bay and he said Milwaukee, here in Milwaukee, or vice versa. It was one or the other a couple of years ago. And he still clings to that, the dummy that made the mistake kind of bit. The What's Up song ran its course like 5 years ago, as far as I'm concerned. So honestly, at this point, I think his sole purpose is jobbing, getting over the younger incoming guys, and the comedy. And I'm doing the bunny ears on the comedy because I really don't find it to be all that amusing anymore. So what I couldn't believe when I was jotting down my notes for tonight is that it's hard to believe that the Awesome Truth headlined against Rock and Cena really not that long ago. It was like 6 years ago, where it was Miz and R-Truth. Remember headlining against Rock and Cena? I think it was like Survivor Series or something towards the end of the year. But that was only 5-6 years ago, so hard to believe that he was at least relevant at that point. So at number 9, now we're going to your list, which is the relevant people that moved. You have Natty going to Raw. Jesus.
Well, I had a whole top 10 list of this, but Natty to Raw is the reason I said this is because of the reason why we talked about her being, the SmackDown role, and what she'd been doing on SmackDown was just totally tiring. And, this is somebody else they should have moved to Raw, just because Becky Lynch is, no one even knows who Becky Lynch is, and I think that's the reason I got excited about Natty going to Raw. Becky Lynch, she comes out and she gets that pop from that music and everything, but that's it. And Natty had turned into that person who no one gives a shit about. I think with her being on Raw, this storyline that they're going to do, and I have no idea if this is really the storyline, but I feel it's going to be Ronda and her as, friends, blah, 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 and you know how they end up, one turns against the other, and it's going to be Natty. Now, her and Natty, there is a potential for them to have some damn good matches. Number one, they train together, and number two, Natty is, at one point, was one of the best workers on the roster. So I'm excited. I think her against Ronda is going to be fun to watch, and Natty's going to make her look good and a lot quicker than some of the other girls could.
You're making some great points. I'm down on Natty. I'm so cold on Natty right now, and I think I'm completely brainwashed by seeing Lana on Total Divas, which who knows how much of that is real and how much of it's not. But Lana making a big deal about Natty's promos being so bad. And I'm like, I can't get that out of my mind. I honestly can't get that out of my mind because now I sit there and nitpick every damn time Natty opens her mouth. She is a terrible promo. She's obviously a good worker. She's been a good worker for years. And again, I kind of almost feel the same way with Truth, with Natty, and the fact that she should only be there basically now to groom other people to get them ready. And you're making some damn good points about Ronda. One thing I will say is that Natty and Ronda together, I will just turn the sound off, my friend, because I can't deal with either one of those two on the microphone. But to your point, I think that she'll do a great job getting Ronda ready for the next level. We've already been there. Ronda did a great job in the match that we've already seen. So I don't see Natty being a big deal, but I think that you might be onto something as far as them teaming together. They're definitely going to work together because they already foreshadowed it. So I think maybe it could be something that revitalizes her career a little bit. So at number 8, back to the irrelevant, we have the future of the business, Mojo Rawley, going to Raw.
You know what? God, did they do a segment? I watch a Hulu. I watched a Hulu version. They didn't even.
They did not.
Well,
they
okay.
did not.
Well, there you go. That's what they thought about it then.
Yep.
Mojo Rawlings, I liked him for like the first 6 weeks because I like a gimmick. I like a wrestler with a gimmick, even though he's not good in the ring. I still like gimmicks, and I like the idea. There's a lot of good things that's been said about him that one of our friends in Facebook, no, not that one. He's not our friend anymore. But he actually knows Mojo, and Mojo, even as he had went to the WWE, before he went to the WWE, he would be that guy that helps set up the ring. If you've ever promoted shows like myself, if you have anyone helps you set up a ring, he's your best friend. But he said he, always wanted to learn, blah blah blah. I'm so sick of the actual character, and he never has really improved, and here's a guy that really, back in the day, a guy like Bill Watts would probably have booked him and been a superstar because he has about as much ability as a Jim. I hate to say this, but Jim Duggan's what he reminds me of. Just not my. And I know a bunch of people in the business really like him, but I just can't stand him.
He went nowhere after the Andre Battle Royal. I mean, I think he actually fell even further down, as far as popularity, as far as any kind of getting over after he won the Andre Battle Royal. I think the heel turn was very ill-advised with him. I think, we all talk about Roman needs to turn. Roman needs to do this. Roman needs to do that, And those of us who are in Roman's corner think that a heel turn for Roman would be what he needs to groom him even further and to get him to grow as a character even more. With Mojo, I think the only hope they had was with the kids and that stupid hype character that he was doing. I think that they had a sliver of hope getting him over with the kids as far as that character. So I think turning him heel, totally ill-advised. I honestly just see him continuing to flounder. Like you said, They didn't even do a segment on the draft of him. They just announced it on Twitter or Facebook or whatever after the fact. I see him getting released. I know everybody, allegedly he's a great guy and this, that, and the other, but I see him getting released and nobody noticing. And all I can think of is that saying, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear it, if Mojo gets released, nobody's even going to notice that he's gone. So
there'll be one person, yeah. There'll be one.
Yep, one person. He'll be the future of TNA. Anyway, at number 7, back to the relevant list, and this one, I would have ranked this one even higher, but on number 7 is Samoa Joe going to SmackDown.
I mean, absolutely. Joe was a great interview on Raw, great interview on SmackDown. And all I could think about when he walked out on SmackDown was the dream matches. You're looking at Daniel Bryan, AJ again, Nakamura again, and you're just thinking, oh my God, Joe can have all of these matches with these guys. And that's the thing about this SmackDown roster. And I wrote a story one time. There was a small promotion in Arkansas that had all the good workers in the area. I mean, they had, and Golden Boy was the booker, but they had a crew of like 12 guys. And they were all the best workers in the Memphis area. And I said, it's a workers' haven. And that's what SmackDown is going to be. I mean, you got the workers, and then you got the entertainment on Raw. That's the way it feels to me. And you may be right about that. Raw is going to be the program that goes to Fox if Fox buys it. But, they're always worried about what's going to happen with SmackDown. SmackDown's going to continue to have an audience, and Joe's going to be a huge part of it.
Yeah, I think this is one of the top moves out of all of it for the work rate fans, for those of us that are the work rate fans, which I think is this audience is the fans of the work rate. Like you said, the matchups that night when he came out on SmackDown, my sole thought was Daniel Bryan. That was the only one I thought of. But mainly because we've seen the other matchups before, and nothing against AJ at all or Nakamura, but they're all going to be fantastic. But how soon can they get to all of them? I swear, but the Daniel one was the one that I was looking the most forward to. So the possibilities are endless with Joe. The thing with Joe is he's so credible on everything. His promos are so strong. His in-ring, obviously, I think Joe is in many ways the total package. There's not too many fans that are anti-Joe, but we hear it. Like Tom Nash is an anti-Joe guy, I know for sure. But he can still go for sure. And I think that he's got years left as a top of the roster guy in WWE. And I think, plus, he's Tongan, right? Because he's Samoa Joe. So, but Vince likes him regardless. Either way, whatever nation in the Pacific that he's from, Vince likes him. So I think he'll be on top for a good long time. So Joe going to SmackDown, another big move. So back to number 6, which is the irrelevant moves, and we have your friend and ours, Jinder Mahal and the Sings going to Raw.
I did though. As soon as I started watching Raw, here they started. The Sings.
Yeah, but you like him.
I did. I told you I don't like him anymore. So, I liked the act. I actually did because I love the idea of the Sings getting their ass whipped all the time. I just love that. And part of me hated it too because I would have done something different with those guys. They're really, really good workers. If you've watched any of their stuff on YouTube, I still say they'd been great as the Curry Bucks. But
Jesus, how did I know we were going to get to that point?
But yeah,
Curry Bucks.
You're right. Who gives a shit about Jinder? I love the idea, which comes, some we're going to talk about later. But I love the idea as he came on to Raw and Angle stumbled around to tell him he's going against Jeff Hardy, and boom, the title's off of him. So yeah, perfect way to bring him in. I'm just scared he's going to win it back. So
Jinder Mahal to Raw. Oh, shit, I fell asleep for a second there. Sorry. Great. All I can say is great. Now we have these hacks on the 3-hour show as opposed to the 2-hour show. So we got stuck with Jinder Mahal. The guy was a flat-out failure on every level. And the one expression that came to mind was, pardon the pun, but Jinder didn't move the needle. Get it? See what I did there? He was, the needle, like, in his ass.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
he didn't move the needle on ratings. He didn't move the needle on, buy rates in India. He didn't move the needle on anything. So, but he moved a lot of needles into his ass. I will say that. The Sings, they're just there to get worn out by Randy Orton. I think that's just somebody's inside joke on, in the locker room, is that they just have Randy Orton beat the shit out of those guys every time they're out there. Once again, Vince should have gone with Mustafa Ali to be this character as the foreign menace. So we're not going to go there because I know you call me racist, but whatever. But Jinder sucks at everything that he touches. I will not retreat from that statement. And the only reason he's not number one on the list of irrelevance is because he at least had the belt last year for a good long stretch. Otherwise, he would be number one on my list of irrelevant moves here. So Jinder Mahal at number 6.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
80s Tees is the leading online retailer of officially licensed t-shirts, specializing in retro movie, music, TV show, video games, comic book, and cartoon t-shirts. 80s Tees has you covered. They have everything from G.I. Joe, Seinfeld, and Back to the Future, as well as 152 different classic wrestling shirts. Plus, free shipping on all orders over $50. Visit them now at our link, tinyurl.com/STS80stees. That's tinyurl.com/STS80STEES. Visiting them at our link will cost you nothing extra, but it will help support this podcast. Now, back to the show.
All right, we got 5 left. So go ahead, Lance. Where are we at?
At number 5, let's see. We're back to the list of relevant moves. So we've got Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens going to Raw.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is I actually loved the way I thought I was going to hate the way they went back to Raw because, they actually wrestled each other last week, and I thought they'd have some little stupid. I didn't know how they were going to put them back on Raw. I actually looked at the list of who went before I watched the show. I thought it was really funny with the Stephanie letter. And KO and Zayn have been a really fun act over at SmackDown, but I think it's great to see them over at Raw, and we'll see some new stuff. Them against new people, and I said new people, not nude people. But yeah, it should be fun. I'm excited about it. I like the act, and I'm excited about seeing them against new people.
I will say I love the act. I think the act is fantastic. But is Kevin Owens the same guy that headbutted Vince late last year and busted him open, and Stephanie cried about it?
Yeah, I don't think
now,
this. You're right about this, and that's why I think we haven't heard the joke yet. I don't think that. Yeah, I think Stephanie didn't do it.
Yeah, maybe there's more to it, but and now she's the one who signed him to Raw with that letter and making Kurt look like a puss again, for the umpteenth time. So I just think they could have done something probably a little bit more creative with that, unless they go in a different direction with it, like you said. But great act, great to have these two guys on Raw. I love the act. I'm a huge fan of Kevin Owens, always have been. I think that he's another guy that can just do it all. Between the promos and the in-ring, he can just do it all. Zayn has come into his own as far as being like just such an annoying little pissant as a heel that you just want to hate the guy, like I always have. And I just think they'll be such a strong addition to Raw, especially, again, the 3-hour show if it stays 3 hours. If it goes to 2, then it may be hard to squeeze them in there. But I think it's one of the few big names and big acts that they brought over to Raw in this whole move. So at number 4, back to the irrelevant, is Zack Ryder going to Raw.
Did they show Zach, or was this just a Twitter?
No, I think this was another graphic. Yeah, I don't think they did.
God, I just Zach is one of those guys that you talk to people that say he's a great guy and blah blah blah, but and he just keeps signing contracts and staying with the WWE. I think it's one of those things where he's been on the road so long, and they take it's just a routine that he does all the time, and he just wants to stay there. I don't even know what to say. The only thing I think about Zack Ryder all the time is I see him on Twitter talking about his wrestling dolls, which I actually like, and he's been really big into what they're called Funko Pops. Some of you guys are going to know what I'm talking about. Some of you didn't think I'm trying to cuss. But he's collecting those, and they're coming out. He's excited about all that kind of stuff. So I don't even think of him as a wrestler. and then he was with Mojo, and so, just who gives a shit,
Woo, woo, woo. You blew it. That's what I say. Why was the internet wrestling community ever so hot on this guy? I don't get it now. I didn't get it then. I think he was an okay worker, but he was just kind of an average promo, I thought. I guess he got over with those videos back, 5-6 years ago. But I never saw it. I still obviously don't see it now. I don't think this guy could possibly be less relevant. I think he's definitely going to be a jobber on Raw. He'll be a Superstars regular, maybe, I suppose. And then the whole thing, like you said, he was with Mojo. Turning Mojo on him did nothing for either one of these guys. It didn't get Mojo over as a killer heel in any regard. It didn't get Zach over as being any kind of sympathetic babyface at any level. I think this guy's going to be lost on Raw. I really do. He'll be lucky to get any kind of airtime unless he's putting over any kind of new killer heels that are coming up from NXT. But oddly enough, he is not my number one most irrelevant move, so that's still to come. So at number 3, we've got back to the relevant, Jeff Hardy going to SmackDown.
Yeah, I thought this was going to SmackDown and also the big push, I think, on both shows. Mm-hmm. You got a guy who, he's kind of one of those stories where you've always liked Jeff Hardy. He's always been over. Every time he comes to WWE, he's got a belt. I think they did some kind of he's had every one of the belts or almost every one of the belts. So he's a guy that we've been watching on TNA for a long time, who was still putting out some really damn good matches and did a damn good job, on Monday and Tuesday. He just worked the WWE style, setting up the finish, boom, 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 it's over kind of thing. But he looked good. The crowd got a really good pop, and they were into the match during the whole time. I'm excited to see Jeff. This is probably one of his last big runs, especially with the WWE, and it'll be exciting to see what they're going to do with him. Thought it was great watching the push on both shows and putting him, in the front there.
Yep. I think Brother Nero can still go. God bless him. And like you said, what a week, because he returns, beats Jinder for the U.S. title, and then moves to SmackDown altogether. So just a great run for him this week, and hopefully they can run with him for a good long time to come. I think this is interesting because it breaks him off from Matt. I think the plan, it appears, is that, obviously he's going to be a solo act, whereas Matt is going to be teaming with Bray. And that'll stay the focus, and they'll stay on Raw, obviously. And I would imagine they're going to win the tag titles on Raw as the semi-mismatched tag team. So I think they run with Matt and Bray on top there, and they run with Brother Nero as a solo on SmackDown. Here's hoping that the DUI that he had not all that long ago was a wake-up call again for Jeff, and that he stays healthy, he stays sober, and he stays performing for years to come. Like you said, I think you're probably right. I don't know, the guy just never seems to break down as far as being able to do the same types of stunt work that he's been doing for years. Yes, he gets injured, and yes, he misses time, but he still does. He's never dumbed it down. He's never taken away some of the high risk stuff that he does. So he still pops the crowd like crazy, still sells a great merch sale. So here's hoping Jeff Hardy stays healthy and stays on SmackDown for years to come. So at number 2, my most irrelevant move of this entire thing is Mike Kanellis going to Raw.
Okay, so did he come out, or did he get a...
He did not. He did not. He got a graphic too.
You know what? I was a huge fan of this guy's in TNA, and then I know some of you guys that do the TNA thread, Randy. I don't know if Randy was as big on him as I was. I can't remember, but...
No, Randy hated him.
Yeah, just a solid freaking worker, and, I've heard but only good things about him. So it seems like they came to WWE and they got pregnant and boom, it's just like, and then he went to rehab. So it can't be good for, the first couple of months that you come to work somewhere, you need to go to rehab. So I hate it for him, but who? That's what I want to, and if anyone has listened to the WrestleMania show, Lance says in the background 3 times the Kanellis baby, which is absolutely hilarious. For we're talking about who we're going to feud people with, and he says Kanellis baby.
Kanellis baby.
Kanellis baby. Canales baby. It's just like you're young. I thought about it after I was listening to it. I was laughing at you, and I was thinking, I bet he walked around all night going, Canales baby.
God damn that Canales baby! I couldn't get on the air with that damn Canales baby. So to get ready for this, I looked up the word irrelevant in the dictionary, and it said Canales and/or Bennett, comma Mike. That's what it said. So I will say he has literally done nothing since he's been in WWE. Literally, he's done nothing since he's been there. And I'll preface all this. I will say I'm glad that he got rehabbed. I'm glad that he's healthy. I'm glad that he's extended his life and his career, and he's in a better place. I'm glad for all of that. So, but literally, if you just can factor that out, career-wise, the guy has done nothing. So I think he was decent in the ring. I can't gush like you did about how good he was in the ring. He's decent in the ring. But the thing was with him is he always was second fiddle to somebody, whether it was Matt Taven or, the other guys that he worked with in Japan, Maria Kanellis herself. He always seems like he's always been second fiddle. He's always been in the background. So the only way they get it, what was that?
Oh, yeah, I was thinking about Maria, so I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay, you got carried away. The only way they get any value from this guy is if Maria comes back after the baby, the Kanellis baby, as it were. So that'll be the only way they can get any value out of this guy. I just don't see him going anywhere. I see him back in ROH or New Japan before long. But here's to him for getting his act healthy again. So good for him. But as far as relevance goes, absolutely at the top of the irrelevant list. So at number 1, though, we have our most relevant move, which I think we actually both probably agree on, is Miz going to SmackDown.
I love the whole thing that they did starting at Raw where, that was his last night. You knew the guys weren't going to do the at the end you knew they were turning on him. You knew that was going to happen. So I loved it. And then on SmackDown, all you're thinking about is all these interviews that him and Daniel Bryan did. For some reason, all that stuff was just to the point so good that we're wanting to see those two guys in the ring. They always talk about talking people to the seats, and that's what they did with those interviews. And I'm thinking, we're going to get to do it. We're going to get to do it. And I absolutely loved him on SmackDown. Miz at home with the baby, which I still think makes him a baby face. And that baby didn't even look real. I yelled at the screen, that baby ain't real.
It was not the Kanellis baby. The Kanellis baby is real.
And his wife, Maurice's just looking better with a little weight on her, man. And those big, I better shut up. But still, this is going to be good. And someone mentioned this on Twitter, and I just cracked up thinking about it. But he was at his house. It would have been funny if Daniel Bryan would have arrived at the house. I mean, you can't have the baby in the scene. But I think this would be fun if The Miz didn't come back to SmackDown for like 6 weeks, and he had videos all over the place. But apparently he's coming back this week. But I think it would be funny where he's with his baby and family in different places of the world or the United States, and Daniel Bryan's waiting on him. So yeah, I'm excited. I mean, Miz has been good for a long time. People are just noticing him. I mean, I put a match probably 5 or 6 years ago on Facebook that said, "Hey, if you want to learn how to work, WWE style and get your stuff in and let everybody else look good, take a look at this match," and it was Miz. So it was actually Miz and Sandow, believe it or not. An excellent match between those two guys on Raw.
Well, I will say this move, if you'll pardon the expression, was awesome. The seeds were planted for Bryan and Miz, 2 years ago? I mean, it was a long time ago when they started doing that stuff and, leaking that stuff out here and there and then doing the talking smack stuff. They're going to do they'll do some great video package to reheat that up again. I think that this is obviously a feud that's tailor-made to go right into. So the in-ring will be good because obviously Daniel, from what we've seen of Daniel's return so far, he's obviously doing well. And Miz can hold his own, like you said. These people that are like, hey, look at that guy Miz. I'm like, where have you been? He's been good for years now. His promos are outstanding. I think the skits here with the two of them will be fantastic. I think that this match can easily headline a pay-per-view. I think they can easily run with the two of those guys on top. Not for like a WrestleMania-type pay-per-view, but one of the secondary shows for sure. I think working with Bryan will get Miz back over as a heel because, like you said, lately all it seems like between the the baby and the dogs and everything else, Miz is getting over as a face of late. But this will convert him back to a heel again, which he's where he's best at. I think they can honestly, if they play their cards right and they string it out, I think they could run with this matchup for a year. I think they could really milk this for a long, long time. And I think it was brilliant planning on their part, anticipating Bryan's return. Because at the time when they started doing all this stuff, nobody knew Bryan was going to come back. Nobody knew that he'd ever get cleared. So I think they were brilliant in getting that over when they did and heating it up, and now the time is right for them to strike. So Miz going to SmackDown, the most relevant move of the shake and bake draft of 2018.
All right. Hey, guys, thanks for joining us. We're going to be here. Actually, we will be here. Same bat time, same bat channel for another Cool Kids Countdown next week. On the best little wrestling podcast in the business. Love my mama.
I love Mandy Rose.
There. See,
I love Mandy Rose.
I changed it up there so I confuse you. You would love Mandy Rose. Hey, thank you for joining us live from SDS Studios in St. Louis, Missouri. And that was another great episode of Shootin The Shiznit. A big thank you to Bob McGee at Pro Wrestlers Between the Sheets, PWBTS.com. Locals to Legends, Gene Jackson at www.localstolegends.com. Sean Garmer over at W2Mnet.com. Guys, we're at Comic Book Mark BT on Twitter, at BT Shootin The Shiznit on Instagram. You can send a PayPal. That's right, a PayPal at Brian_Tramel, Tramel, at yahoo.com. All the archives are on our www.stspod.club page. That's right, Cool Kids Wrestling and MMA Talk Facebook group. You can join that and talk about wrestling. If we don't like you, we'll kick you out. There's also a Shootin The Shiznit Facebook page where we actually post all the new episodes. Remember, you can listen to this episode and many more on iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM, Pop Paradise, and Spreaker. And finally, a shout out to our podcast bros: Suplex City Limits, Creative Control, Who's Right Podcast, P3 Radio. And guys, remember, keep it at 100. Patreon site is only $1. Help my buddy JoJo out there. Only $1. Join us next week for another great episode of Shootin The Shiznit.